Hello, everybody. Welcome back to It's Called Football. Well, we have finished off with match day 8 in the Premier League, and we are now into a 2-week international break. So, for those of you that have been following along with the club football, you can kind of take a breath right now, go back and rewatch matches or highlights or your favorite moments from the last month or so since the last international break ended and up to this one. So let's get into what happened in this match day. It was quite a busy and eventful set of games, and we kicked off with Luton Town hosting Tottenham, followed by Chelsea traveling to Burnley, Bournemouth traveling to Everton, Fulham hosting Sheffield United, and then Manchester United welcoming Brentford to Old Trafford. Now, there were some stories going into this game beforehand. Obviously, Luton Town are looking to try and improve upon their run of results, and Tottenham are looking to maintain their unbeaten start and stay near the top of the table as much as they can. Chelsea obviously have had a good result last week when they beat Fulham, and in general look to be on a little bit of an upswing in form, and they were hoping to continue that at Burnley. Everton have had a mixed bag of results in recent weeks. Obviously, their home form has not been good. They have not been able to pick up really anything at home um, since opening day, I believe. But they also got beaten at their home ground by Luton Town uh, last match week. So, and Bournemouth obviously got dismantled by Arsenal. So both of those teams looking for something to kickstart their new run of form, or they're hopeful of that. Bournemouth are one of the two sides in the division right now who are still without a win this season going into the eighth match. The other team without a win is Sheffield United, who travel to Fulham. And finally, Manchester United, who've also had rocky patches of form so far in this set of club matches, welcomed Brentford, who have had their own little shaky spell of form. And more importantly, through history, Brentford had not yet managed to score a goal at uh, at Manchester United. And so these were the results that we saw from the first set of games. Tottenham Hotspur continued their unbeaten streak somewhat fortuitously against Luton Town. They did score a good goal to go ahead, but then they also had a man sent off at that point, and the game could have gone either way. Luton Town could have rescued it, but perhaps a lack of quality, maybe a little bit of lack of assurance in themselves, prevented them from getting any sort of a result. Chelsea, on the other hand, ran riot at Burnley. Although Burnley did score the opening goal of the match, Chelsea then rallied and managed to score four goals unanswered at that point, with Raheem Sterling at the center of everything good that they were doing in this match. Everton finally got a good result at home this season, as they easily disposed of Bournemouth with a 3-0 win. Very, very, very good performance from them. They will be thrilled to go into the international break on the back of that result, and hopefully for them, they will continue that form once the season resumes in 2 weeks. Fulham, it took them until later on in the second half to really get going with this. They did score, and so did Sheffield United. They were level at 1-1, and then Fulham scored a goal to go ahead 2-1, and then sealed it in stoppage time at the very end of the game with another clinching goal. They'll be happy with that result. Sheffield United and Bournemouth obviously still without a win, having lost this match. And there's work to be done for them. Now, the Manchester United Brentford score might look fairly routine on paper, but it was anything but that. Brentford actually went ahead due to some poor defensive work from midfielders Casemiro and defender Lindelof for Manchester United, and then also a poor attempt at a save from new United goalkeeper Andre Onana. It took until after the 92nd minute, meaning we were into the extra minutes of stoppage time at the end of the match, when substitute Scott McTominay, who plays for Scotland internationally, who came off the bench, he scored twice for United to actually turn defeat into victory. Absolutely incredible result for them, and they will be over the moon to be going into their break of such a good result in the end, although the performance obviously left a little bit to be desired still. Our other matches, and most of the big ones that we advised you to keep an eye out for this match day, most of them occurred on Sunday. However, we did see Crystal Palace host Nottingham Forest, and then we moved into Sunday's games, where Brighton and Hove Albion hosted Liverpool, West Ham United hosted Newcastle, Wolves and Aston Villa went head to head, and then the big match of this weekend, and probably the biggest match so far this season, which everyone had been waiting for, was Arsenal against Manchester City. Uh, Palace obviously have had a little bit of rocky form, not necessarily consistent. Forest have been a little unlucky with certain results, but they also haven't been in stellar form. And that game actually we'll get to in a minute. Brighton, obviously, by their standards, haven't had the best run of form recently. Liverpool were slightly, obviously, still seething from being honestly cheated last week against Tottenham. And then a lot of these other teams that played on Sunday are in good form. Obviously, the big one, like we said, was the very last one, Arsenal against Manchester City on Sunday. And with those two teams being the ones that finished in the top two last season and expected to be battling it out for the league title again this year, it was understandable why this was the blockbuster fixture that everyone was waiting for. Because last season Manchester City managed to win home and away against Arsenal, which ultimately is what made the difference really in the points tallies between the two sides in the title race last year. Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest played out a nil-nil draw. Wasn't overly thrilling, and again, you're welcome to go back and watch highlights of that one if you wish. Sunday's games, however, did not disappoint. Brighton and Liverpool played out a thrilling 2-2 draw. And the same went for West Ham and Newcastle. Actually, they followed the exact same pattern. In both those matches, the home team went ahead by a goal first, the away team then rallied to score twice, and then the home side equalized again. Wolves and Aston Villa played out a 1-1 draw. Wolves, obviously, who beat Manchester City last week, and Aston Villa, who beat Brighton, perhaps both riding high on confidence now. Ultimately, nothing to separate them. And then what could, in air quotes, what could prove to be a gargantuan result to affect the title race. We won't know, obviously, until more weeks have been played out and more results have happened. But Arsenal managed to get an all-important goal and win 1-0 against Manchester City. Huge, huge result in the title race, and we will go into that match and some of the others in just a few moments. So, despite a lot of the sides on the same part of the table going head to head, and a lot of those matches ending in draws meant that there wasn't actually a ton of movement at the top end of the table or in the top half at all, really. In fact, the only real movement in terms of positions was within the top three. Manchester City's defeat combined with Tottenham and Arsenal's wins meant that the two North London clubs, Spurs and Arsenal, now remain unbeaten, both on 6 wins, 2 draws, 20 points, and a goal difference of +10. Both of them sit in the top two spots, and Manchester City have now dropped to third. Obviously, they are not out of the title race by any means whatsoever. They're just a couple of points behind, but we have seen Manchester City pull back bigger deficits than this. So while it is a big result, at the moment. There's obviously lots of opportunity that Manchester City will have to claw this back, and Liverpool as well, to be fair, who aren't far behind either. Aston Villa and Brighton obviously are close on their tail, and then there's a small gap between Brighton and then West Ham, Newcastle, and then Crystal Palace and Manchester United. Ultimately, though, the top 10 teams are only separated by 8 points, three fixtures more that get played, and you could see a drastic difference in how the table looks. So, nothing major at this point that you could really say, and no big conclusions that can be drawn from just 8 games played. But there are some very big stories, obviously, that have happened this season that were different from last year. Bottom half of the table saw Chelsea maintain their place in 11th. At the moment, they're right on the cusp of breaking into the top half. Fulham and Nottingham Forest have swapped places due to Fulham getting a win against Sheffield United and Nottingham Forest merely drawing at Crystal Palace. The same can be said for Wolves and Brentford. Brentford's defeat, combined with Wolves getting another point from their draw against Aston Villa, meant they swapped spots. But the bottom half of the table also saw minimal movement because of the results overall. Everton, despite their win, they have kind of put a little bit of breathing room now between themselves and the bottom three, although again, because they're only 3 points in front of 17th and 18th place, that could change very, very quickly in one match day if the results don't favor them. Luton Town and Burnley are still on 4 points, both on 6 defeats now, and Bournemouth, like we said earlier, remain one of the two sides, along with Sheffield United, who are yet to register a victory yet this season. Major concerns, I guess, starting to grow at the moment in those bottom four teams, but especially the goal difference, because if it does end up being that, say, Sheffield United manages to get points to level themselves in terms of points with some of the teams above them, their goal difference at the moment is doing them no favors. So there is obviously work to be done for those bottom 4 or 5 sides, but very entertaining set of fixtures this match day. And although there isn't a lot of movement, you're starting to see patterns now take shape in terms of where teams are going to be, uh, or roughly their position in the league. So some of our big, big moments from the match day. Scott McTominay, much maligned. He's been deemed by a lot of United fans to be not good enough at the moment to be representing Manchester United. And yes, perhaps you could argue that he's not necessarily the same quality as some of the other midfielders they have, but he has proven himself to be a decent squad player, and he will battle hard for Manchester United as he's been a part of their academy and their club from a very young age. You could see how much it meant to him for anyone who watched that game, for him to score those 2 goals to save the entire result for Manchester United. It meant the world to him and to all the fans that were watching there at their home ground. Raheem Sterling, his form hasn't necessarily been consistent, but he was absolutely essential to Chelsea's result this weekend, where he managed to assist, I believe, both of Chelsea's first 2 goals, and then he got in on the act himself, scoring the third. If he can keep up that form, he will be a dangerous player, and the whole league knows that he can be a very dangerous player on his day. If you have been following football for the last many years, you will know that he has been a very troublesome player for opposition sides when Sterling used to play for Liverpool and Manchester City. So Chelsea fans obviously will be hoping that he maintains his form and continues to carry it post internationals. Everton. What can we say about Everton? They started off looking like they were going to struggle, and in the last two, three match days, they've started to put together some results at least that perhaps will help them be a little more comfortable this season because in the last 2 years, they have been fighting that battle to stay in the league right up until the last few match days. And this time, at least, it looks at the moment like they're starting to build at least some kind of momentum and get some kind of results at least. So we will have to see how that plays out. Obviously, it's hard to predict when an international break comes up because players can get injured and simply be unavailable for various reasons. We don't know what will happen, but Everton fans will be hoping that their team can maintain the kind of form that has seen them pick up these few very valuable points that has taken them out of those bottom three spots. Liverpool had um, contrasting emotions for some of their players in their fixture against Brighton. Like we said earlier, Brighton did go ahead in that match, actually down to a little bit of a mistake from the player you see in the bottom left there, Alexis McAllister, who used to be a Brighton player and was welcomed very nicely back at Brighton by their fans, who were obviously very appreciative of everything he's done for them over the last year or so. Uh, and they clearly bore him no ill will. However, maybe the occasion got to him a little bit. Maybe it was just something that happened. But he did make the mistake that gave away Brighton's first goal. However, thankfully for Liverpool, they had no such issues affecting Mohamed Salah, their Egyptian king, one of the best attackers the Premier League has seen in the last few years alone, let alone the entire history of the Premier League. Salah is undoubtedly an incredible talent, still going strong at 31 years of age. He scored both of Liverpool's goals in their match against Brighton before the game was leveled again later on by the Seagulls. There's a lot of history that has gone behind Arsenal and Manchester City, especially since 2019, because the manager of Arsenal, Mikel Arteta, used to actually be the assistant manager of Pep Guardiola, the manager of Manchester City. Now, Arteta was an Arsenal player for a few years before his eventual retirement. He then went on to be an assistant manager with Pep Guardiola at Manchester City, where they won a lot of trophies, and Arteta obviously learned a lot. Since Arteta became Arsenal manager in late 2019, he has not yet been able to beat Manchester City. In fact, since January 2015, Arsenal have not beaten Manchester City in the league. Although they did beat them in the Community Shield and in an FA Cup match or two here and there, the league is where Arsenal have consistently come undone. In fact, going into their game this weekend, Arsenal had lost their last 12 straight league matches to Man City. And so for Arteta, it was starting to become, I guess, a little bit of a monkey on his back and on Arsenal's back in terms of were they ever going to be able to get the better of Manchester City. And the game didn't actually start off very promisingly because Arsenal goalkeeper David Raya, who's been a new addition to the side and has recently been getting a place starting in the team, he had a bit of a shaky or nervous start to the game, nearly giving away a goal. What you can see there in the image was him about to clear it, and Man City attacker Julian Alvarez doing his best to intercept it. In fact, one of these interceptions nearly led to a goal for City early on. It did look very much like Arsenal were letting the emotion and the occasion get to them a little bit. But it started to calm down and Arsenal grew into the game. And then came another, you guessed it, controversial moment involving the officials because this incident happened first, where one of Man City's new signings this summer, Mateo Kovacic, went into a tackle like this on Arsenal captain Martin Odegaard. And you can see in the still image here, Kovacic has his studs up. Um, Generally, when you go into a tackle with your studs up like that and you make contact, it's a red card. We saw a Liverpool player get a red card quite harshly for a similar uh, challenge last week. And yet the referee gave a yellow card. And although VAR did look at the incident, they deemed it not worthy enough to escalate to a red. So this was the first bit of controversy that occurred that left people wondering what was going on because this looked like it should have been a straight red. However, the next bit that followed up just a few minutes later was that despite this being a yellow, and then Kovacic doing this tackle on Declan Rice just a few minutes later, you can see very similar. And if the first tackle was a yellow, so should the second, really, by what we're seeing. And yet he received nothing, just a verbal warning from the ref. And so there's a lot here to be unpacked. And despite what the result was eventually of the game, it shouldn't be something that the officials are let off the hook for because it's just like Liverpool's incident last week where their goal was wrongfully disallowed. The officials have to be held to high standards. If the Premier League can truly claim to be the best league in the world, then they need consistency. If the decisions are harsh, then they can be harsh, but they need to then apply fairly to all teams. So a lot of fans and ex-players and pundits in the media were thinking about why this has been going on. Why is there inconsistency? Why wasn't there a second yellow card given? And as the game went on, people were thinking, okay, Arsenal have been robbed a little bit here because they should be a player up. And if City did manage to get a result here, obviously the talking point would be Kovacic and why he didn't get a second yellow card. However, huge credit has to be given not just to Declan Rice, but also to Arsenal's centre back pair. Eventually, the game went on, and in the second half, Arsenal grew in confidence. They brought on substitutions at exactly the right time, and Gabriel Martinelli for Arsenal, who's been out for a few weeks now with a hamstring problem, luckily managed to make his return just in time for this game. And in the 86th minute, he received the ball from Kai Havertz on the edge of the box to be able to fire a shot from outside the area, which took a slight deflection off the face of defender Nathan Ake that you can see, number 6 in the blue shirt. And that little deflection managed to take it past the keeper to score what became the only goal of the game. Arsenal afterwards, obviously, with just a few minutes left, needed to just ride it out, but they did that in impressive fashion too. If you didn't watch the match, there are videos of the last couple of minutes of the game right after this goal was scored, and the control with which Arsenal maintained possession afterwards was basically sending a big message to Manchester City in that we're at your level, come and get us if you can. So very, very impressive performance overall from Arsenal. It was not just a fluky smash and grab win, although it looked worryingly like it would head that way after the opening few minutes. Arsenal did very well to grow back into it and earn this victory, which should hopefully be a huge weight off their shoulders mentally as they go into the remaining fixtures in the league season. Huge amount of credit has to go to the three players you see in the new picture that just popped up here. Leftmost is Arsenal centre back Gabriel with his centre back partner William Saliba. And then just behind them, Declan Rice, who held that midfield role so well. These three players were probably the main reason Arsenal didn't concede a goal in the first half when things were a little bit rocky still in terms of confidence. But they were absolutely outstanding all game from the first whistle to the very last. And eventual result meaning that finally, the apprentice, Mikel Arteta, got one over on the master, Pep Guardiola. He will be thrilled with this. Arsenal will be thrilled with this. As a fan, I know I'm thrilled with this. But superb game, and it wasn't as flashy or exciting as other meetings have been between these two sides or when these two sides play other teams. But that's because both teams know how talented the other is, and this one felt a lot more like a tactical battle, like a chess match, than an explosive game of football, which is basically what the top level has become now. If you want to get a result, you really have to wait for the other side to make a mistake, and that's what happened. So, sorry that this video's been a little long, but how did we do? Well, obviously, if Spurs hadn't got a man sent off, it's very possible they would have run riot. As it was, they did get their win, and albeit by a single goal. We actually underestimated Chelsea because instead of winning 3-1, they actually won 4-1. But they did play very well, and they earned that. I honestly thought that Bournemouth would put up a little more of a fight against Everton than they did. But kudos to Everton for flying out of the blocks and getting a great result. Fulham again got that last minute goal to really put the icing on the cake, which is the only reason our scoreline prediction was wrong. Manchester United, I keep waiting and thinking that they're going to put it all together and get a comfortable win, and it doesn't seem to be quite happening, but they did get their win and the result over the line. However, luckily or by good grace that they managed to do it. Palace and Forest, I was a little disappointed by as a fixture in general. I was expecting a little bit more out of it, but perhaps a fair result. Liverpool really should have gone 3-1 up at one point when they were 2-1 up and they missed a golden opportunity to go ahead. But full credit to Brighton to keep on fighting, and they are very tough to beat at their own home ground. Newcastle and West Ham, again, full credit to West Ham for not giving up when they were 2-1 down and stealing a point from this game. I thought Villa might have a bit too much for Wolves, but clearly Wolves are made of sterner stuff than we've seen in the opening weeks for the most part. And perhaps that victory over Man City last week has galvanized them enough, which is what allowed them to take a point from what is a very, very good Aston Villa side. And then finally, I'm so thrilled I got this one wrong because Man City normally have had a very good record against Arsenal. And I was a little worried that that wasn't going to change, but fantastic, fantastic performance by Arsenal in that game. They've earned their victory, and hopefully they use this as a platform to build on and really mount a title challenge, which hopefully ends up successful this season for them. Because it would be good for the Premier League, I think, to see a real title race and hopefully a different winner. And Arsenal, after last season and so far this season, look like hopefully they can do that this time. Sorry again that it's been a bit of a long video, but we just want to go in detail as this is the final round of fixtures before a 2-week international break. Hopefully, you're able to tune into some of those international games. We will have a video or two coming out over these couple of weeks. A little bit of background on the Premier League is coming. And if you have any questions about English football, feel free to send those in, and we'd be thrilled to incorporate some of those questions and their answers into a video for you. But this is where we leave you for now. Take care. Please drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and remember, it's called football.